Hi everybody, Maureen of Maureen 97 Designs here, and today I have another quick tip for stamping. I'm sure many of you have seen Jennifer McGuire and other stampers like Christina Werner Hansen using press and seal to help lift up their die cuts to keep them in place while they turn them over and glue them and then put them back into place on their cards. And sorry if that's confusing, I'll show it in just a little bit. But anyway, if you're familiar with that method, I was watching a video this morning of someone doing it, and they of course had their piece of press and seal like this, and they were placing it on their area with the die cuts and rubbed so that the die cuts would stick to the press and seal, and lifted it up and then turned it over, applied glue to the back of the die cuts, and then was sort of like kind of maneuvering it sort of like this. And it occurred to me that that was a little bit fiddly and awkward, and you know what would really help with that is if there was some sort of a frame type of thing to hold the press and seal. So you didn't have to worry about it kind of folding in on itself. You're not having to keep it taut and place it exactly back where you want it and things like that. So I came up with the idea of a press and seal frame. Basically, all I'm using is a electric die cutting machine sticky mat, which I think a lot of us are familiar with sticky mats now. We've been using them for a lot of things lately, and I've actually been using them for years. I have a video going back to, I don't remember when, like 2015 or something, using a sticky mat to hold die cuts in place while you stamp on them. But anyway, there are also commercially available sticky mats that you can buy now, like from My Sweet Petunia or Brutus Monroe. But for this one, I'm going back to using the electronic die cutting machine sticky mat because I don't want to spend the money on the real sticky mat for the MISTI when I'm going to be cutting it up anyway. So basically I have this one, and it's actually a brand called Nikappa. Sorry, I actually cut that off, but it's, if you can see, there we go. Nikappa. This is the other half of it. I cut it at 6. Although the MISTI is 6.5 inches wide, I cut it in half at 6 inches because then you can get 2 of these frames out of one 12 by 12 sticky mat. So basically I cut off the top and bottom, which was the extra space that's not sticky, and then I cut it in half at the 6 inches. There's a little bit of area here, a margin, where that's not sticky, and you can cut that off as well. I just left it because, it can fit in the MISTI, so it's not a big deal. But if you want to cut that off, feel free to cut that off because it's not sticky, so it's not going to help you in the end. And then I cut it this way, 8.5 inches. And all I did at that point was get a craft knife, and I don't have mine right here. I don't think, oh here, I have this one. So let's just say this is my craft knife, and I'm going to, of course, not cut on my MISTI. But I just basically came in about a 1/2 inch from the edge and did a cut, and you have to kind of go through it a couple times, and I left the protective plastic on because I don't want my hands sticking to the mat. So it takes a few swipes to get all the way through the cutting mat, and then at that point I just took my scissors and went around, and I stayed approximately a 1/2 inch in from the edges all the way around, and I came up with a frame. So you can see this is the sticky mat frame. You can see the grid lines on the side here, and then this was the brand name at the bottom. And then this is my frame. I already have the press and seal on here, but you can kind of get an idea of what that would look like. And then I have this leftover piece from the inside, which I can use as a regular sticky mat if I want, or I could actually cut this down and make a smaller frame. It's up to you. then basically at that point, all you do is you tear off your piece of press and seal, and I'm going to place this sticky side up, and I'm going to lay it down as nicely as I can, kind of making sure it's as flat as possible. Then I'm going to get my sticky mat, my sticky frame. I'm going to expose the adhesive on the sticky frame and then put that adhesive side down on the sticky side of the press and seal. Then once you have that stuck on, all you're going to do is cut around, and I left a little bit of a border around it, and I just wrapped it around and stuck it to the back of the sticky frame. But you don't have to do that. You can cut it even with the edges. The stickiness of the sticky frame is what's going to hold that press and seal in place. So you can see once it's on this frame, it's a lot easier to handle. I don't have to worry about trying to keep the whole thing flat. It's going to stay kind of flat for me. And then the bonus of having this frame is when you go to put it in your MISTI, line up my MISTI so you can see the whole thing here. You can actually put the frame in the corner, butt it up against the corner, and get your die cuts, and then when you lift it off, put your glue, and then you want to put your die cuts back in place, again you just line up that corner and then you put your die cuts in place. And I'll show you exactly what I mean by that. So let's say this is your A2 size card panel, and I have a bunch of die cuts. These are from a Tailored Expression set, and I just did some really fast, not Copic, chameleon coloring with these. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to place down first my stem, and then the coneflower head, and then let's say I want this here, and this here, and this here. Sorry, I don't have an actual project. I just wanted to share with you the tip of how this works. And then I'm going to put the leaves behind this one and this one. And this is exactly how I want my die cuts to end up on my card. And if I try and glue them down just like this, I have to actually lift off the top one to get to the bottom one, put glue on the back of it, and then stick it down in place. And I'm going to have to remember where that was, and then I'm going to have to turn this over, put glue on the back, and put it down into place. And I kind of have to remember where everything goes if I want it exactly in the same position. But Jennifer McGuire came up with the press and seal method, where you put your press and seal, and I'm going to use my press and seal frame. You put your press and seal sticky side down over your die cuts, and you press. And that sticks the press and seal to the die cuts. And it's going to stick a little bit to your card panel, which is why I've actually stuck my card panel onto the base of my MISTI with some removable adhesive. You don't really want to use your sticky mat on the bottom of the MISTI to hold your card in, because the press and seal will stick to the sticky mat and it's going to be a little bit harder to get it off. So once I have all my die cuts pressed down and I think they're sticking to my press and seal nicely, I'm going to carefully lift up my frame, helping the die cuts up if they're not coming up right away. And there you go. You see, the die cuts are stuck to the press and seal in my press and seal frame exactly where I wanted them. Now what I'm going to go do is I can turn this over, and I can actually do this a couple of ways. I can do it in layers, or I can do it all at once. But see, you can see, like for instance, let me zoom in here. Right here we have the stem of the flower and the flower underneath the stem. So if I just place my glue, my stem is not going to stick to the flower, in that area, and you know, that might bother some people, it might not. So it's up to you how you want to do this. But the first way you can do it is just put glue on the pieces that are on the very bottommost layer, which would be this stem with leaves, this set of leaves, and this set of leaves. And then you could also do this flower because it's just by itself, so it can be on any layer. But the other 3 flower heads are going to be on an upper layer. They're the second layer, so I wouldn't put glue on them. And then I would go ahead, put my press and seal frame back into place in my MISTI. Let me zoom out. And the great thing is, because it's got that frame, I can put it right up in that corner, and now I have him. And you might not be able to tell, but I can tell that it's exactly in the same place that I laid it down before I picked it up with the press and seal. And then what you do is you just press down those things that you glued, which was just the leafy parts. And you wait a second for the glue to dry, because you're probably using a liquid glue. If you're using something like a tape runner or something, you can probably lift it up right away. But if you're using a liquid glue, just wait a minute or two for that glue to kind of set and stick those pieces down. And then you can go ahead and lift your press and seal frame back up. And then it's not going to have that bottom layer. You're just going to have the 3 flower heads, and now you put glue on those flower heads and you stick it down. Alternatively, and I'll just show you this way, you can just glue everything all at the same time. And I have my liquid adhesive here, and I'm just going to I just want to do this really quickly, so I'm not going to be too careful. But I'm going to put glue all over every layer that is on the press and seal right now. And this is the second way you can do it. If you're not too worried about those pieces that are overlapping not being stuck together, then go ahead and do it this way. Okay. So now that I have the glue on the back of my die cuts, I'm going to turn my press and seal frame back over. And I always know which side is the correct side because I can see the writing on it is down here in this bottom right corner. So I'm going to line up the left side of my frame in the left bottom corner, and then I'm going to gently lay my frame down, and it's going to go right into place because it's got that shape of the frame. And then I'm just going to gently press my die cuts down to the paper, and they are exactly where I want them to be. And like I said, I'm going to wait a minute or two for my glue to set up and hold them down. I'm using, this is art glitter glue, so it dries pretty fast. I think the Barely Arts also dries pretty fast, so I wouldn't worry too much about having to let it sit a really long time. So when you think the glue is set and those die cuts are sticking to your card panel now, you can gently lift up your press and seal frame, and you can actually help those die cuts to stay down by peeling them off of your press and seal, and you can leave them in place. You can see this one is set up a little bit better. It's coming right off. Actually, and that one is not stuck down yet, so I'm going to help it and just peel my press and seal off. And then you can see the die cuts are all in place exactly where I wanted them. And my press and seal frame can actually be used again and again. If the press and seal itself gets a little bit dusty or doesn't stick anymore, you can just go ahead and remove it from the sticky frame. It'll come right off, just like that. And then you can go ahead and put a new piece of press and seal on it. And actually, let me show you putting down the press and seal now that I'm taking this off anyway. So let me get this out of the way. And like I said, you just get your press and seal sticky side up, making sure that's the sticky side. And you want to place it as flat as you can, and then you're putting the sticky side of your frame down, and this is the easiest way to do it. And then you just press that into place. It's not going to be super tight. It's not going to be like a drum or like, you know, bouncing a quarter off your bed sheets, but it's going to hold it pretty flat and in place for you so that you don't have to worry about holding it perfectly so that it doesn't fold in on itself. And then, like I said, you just go ahead and cut, and you can leave extra or you can cut right up to your sticky frame. And there you go, and you can actually press it down from the sticky side or the other side from the back to make sure it's really stuck into that frame. And there you go, you have your press and seal frame ready to use. So I hope this tip helps some of you out there, and if you have any questions, please leave them in the comments below. Thanks very much for watching. I'll see you next time.